Today I'd like to read out to you this essay written by one Graham Swindle titled Notes on Form and Space in the American West. This is on Allan Dwan's 1954 film, Passion. While often praised as one of the freeway collaborations between director Allan Dwan, cinematographer John Alton, and producer Benedict Burgos, Passion 1954 is rarely spoken of on its own terms. It is one of Dwan's plethora of hidden, forgotten films, overshadowed in modern assessments by its more critically renowned predecessor Silverlode 1954. It's certainly an easy film to ignore, with an often meagre revenge narrative populated by cardboard cutouts of Western mythology, the kindly grandfather, the evil land baron, the spicy Latina et al. At first glance, few would question its dismissal as a rote Western. Its merits are not as loud as its ragged colours. But such a dismissal would be a mistake. Passion presents an artificial world of remarkable consistency, encased within a series of formal compositions of escalating complexity. Its simple narrative trappings belie its inner intricacies. It's a shallow film of remarkable depth. It's a simple narrative. One Oberon, Cornell Wilde, rides his cattle home after a time away. He returns to the kindly Mello family, an old couple with vivacious twin daughters Yvonne DiCarlo and Yvonne DiCarlo, one of whom has just birthed Oberon's son. The land they live on is owned by Don Domingo, Richard Hale, a greedy landlord who demands rent that the Mello family cannot pay. Domingo hires a group of thugs to burn down the Mello hacienda, which in its 15-minute standing is presented as a simple heaven on earth. The old woman, her husband, and the mother of one's child are killed. The tougher DiCarlo sister escapes and tells Oberon what has happened, triggering his quest for vengeance that drives the rest of the film forward. One by one, Oberon hunts down the perpetrators of the massacre, seeking confessions. During each encounter, he is forced to kill and move on. Lackluster policemen, led by a baggy-bottomed Raymond Burr, secretly on Oberon's side, hunt our hero for his murderous crimes. After a bravura pursuit of the final killer into the snow-capped mountains, and moments before the policemen are forced to gun Oberon down, DiCarlo manages to inform him that his infant son survived the fire, and the last living killer makes a confession to the lawman before giving up the ghost. All is saved. Presumably Oberon can still marry the woman who looks exactly like his previous common-law wife, raise his child, and become the head of the atomic family that Domingo's henchmen cruelly stripped away from him. Indifferent nature and human brutality are overcome, and the groundwork for a future California of middle-class families is laid. The average spectator expects a film to satisfy in the meaning of its story and perhaps in the feelings and emotions of its characters. A viewer of more discerning taste might expect beauty in the overall structure of a film, in the unity of rhythms and content across its whole. Judged on these values, Passion appears unspectacular failure. To love it, you must look for the beauties of each shot and glance, not as a whole necessarily, but in and of themselves. We must always speak of two auteurs of Passion, the one who moves the bodies, Dwan, and the one who lights them, Alton. Viewed from a distance, it is almost impossible to define where the thoughts of one begin and the other end. If critics tend to push away the cinematographer as author in favour of the director, it is frequently for no other reason than convenience. The force of Alton's presence demands we consider him on equal footing. People are always walking by in the distance, drifting by in the background, unnoticed by the stars and unaffected by the drama. An entire world hovers at the edges of the film. Not a naturalistic world, for its contents are quotidian. It is a world of murmurs and colours, figures as hollow and mythic as the protagonists that drive the narrative. Nondescript individuals carry out their daily tasks, shadows flow across walls, animals pace freely. The speech is neither realistic Spanish nor the comfortable American English. Instead, phrases are all poorly translated from the former into the latter, full of awkward rhythms and misplaced emphasis. Not a photograph, but a fresco in gaudy colours, peddled to the floods of tourists, entitled Life in Old California. By extension of this concept, we can look at this film as a series of paintings, part classical, part kitsch. First shot, post-credits. A man on a horse, behind him a layer of cows, behind them a layer of men on horses moving from side to side, then a river, trees, a hill, the horizon, a succession of separate and independent fields. We will see different versions of this receding composition played out again and again, with almost immediately follows the introduction of Don Domingo, the villain, standing in silhouette smoking a cigarillo. A railing, a ledge of a clay pot, dirt, a man on a horse, looking back, a fountain, women doing the wash, further back, men going about their business. Even further, an empty square, stairs, a house, a hill with trees. Passion is a flat narrative composed of many flat fields, but the result is three-dimensional. Like Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs 1937, Passion is in essence a series of glass plates of overlapping paintings, resulting in a sensation of depth formed from a series of two-dimensional layers. A later shot opens to an empty square with an arch in the distance, and beyond that a trail of woods. A woman, moving away from the camera, walks calmly towards a set of stairs. Oberon rides through the arch towards the camera, which slowly pans to follow his path, then back to its original framing. A man carrying a bundle of sticks crosses the screen from right to left, while Oberon moves from background to foreground. The woman's movement counters his, moving away from the lens towards the background. A man enters the left side of the frame to take Oberon's horse as he dismounts. The woman starts her way up the stairs. The man with the sticks exits on the left. The man takes the horse and begins to walk towards the arch, while Oberon walks towards the camera. From the bottom of the frame, a dog enters, running towards Oberon. The woman approaches the top of the stairs. The man and horse continue straight back towards the arch, and Oberon and the dog exit the left side of the frame. The next shot immediately begins with no fewer than 7 separate planes. From the interior of a room, the camera looks out through a doorway towards a porch. Oberon enters on the right. Beyond him is a set of wooden stairs. Beyond the stairs, a man walks from left to right. Beyond him, a second man mirrors him, walking right to left. Past them are trees and flowers. Beyond that, an empty space of dirt, a wall jutting partially into the frame from the left, and finally followed by the walls of buildings. This view lasts only a few seconds until Altan pans to follow Oberon into the interior of the building. These obsessive sequences of layers could be overlooked, but once noticed, they take hold of the film. Each space appears riddled with openings, doors, windows, gates. Every wide shot becomes flooded with possibility. Slowly but surely, the compositions transcend the narrative framework they have been placed within. How, one asks, does the form of this film, layer upon layer, plane upon plane, add to the narrative? It doesn't. They run parallel. In Passion, form and content are not harmonious. They simply exist alongside one another for the same 80 minutes. The constant parade of windows, doorways, passages, alleys, and trees become a game for the eye. One can almost feel Dwan/Altan, a bit bored perhaps, shooting their second of 3 westerns in 1954, and how many westerns had they individually worked on before these, trying to discover a new type of space in every shot. Their multiplane approach gives the external figures something to stroll through. The multitude of windows gives more than a glimpse of painted backdrops. They give us a view of an entire world existing just outside the boundaries of our narrative. Dwan is one of cinema's masters of proscenium stagecraft. His approach to movement throughout Passion is essentially theatrical. It is derived from a static frame and the tension of bodies moving in, out, and around it. The angle of view is generally medium-wide. Bodies are presented in their entirety, and information is conveyed through the movement of actors' bodies more than the contortions of their faces. Camera movement, montage, and optical effects are not foundational. As in theatre, the basis is the presence of a body in a space and the movement of that body in relation to the spectator's eye. Much could be made of Dwan's early career working as an assistant to D.W. Griffith. In Griffith, we see the cinematic essence of bodies in space in a primitive mode, stylistically inconsistent, following no rules, instead writing them, always serving a basic emotional utility. Dwan takes this emotive style and develops it into calculated composition. By infusing Griffith's instinctual staging with a certain self-consciousness, Dwan becomes the stepping stone towards the later great theatrical filmmakers, Rivette, Oliveira, Late Dreyer, etc. This is not to say that Dwan eschews all camera movement or montage, rather it is through theatrical composition that Dwan arrives at the core of his cinema. His approach allows his audience to look into and through each space, instead of being immersed within them. The central focus is not the bodies themselves, but the space around them. As opposed to the lyrical primitive approach of Griffith or Oliveira's modernist hyper-aware style, Dwan emerges as a classicist. He is the silent director who evolved, but never abandoned the stylistic ideals of the 1910s. The compositional paradigm remains theatrical in essence, not overtaken by the documentary elements of photography, nor the innovations of montage beyond the basic Griffith model. He follows tradition, but uses the rules to suit his distinctive tastes. Working along with Altan, a stand-in for Griffith's Spitzer, Dwan calmly rediscovers movement within this framework, bit by bit, one shot at a time. The action of the narrative, like the mise-en-scene, is not psychological but physical. The film is punctuated by a series of violent struggles sparked by the initial violence against the Malo family. Interestingly, guns only come into play in the first and last of these scenes. Tossing the typical Western shootout aside, Passion is film of knives. However, it's not a brutal work. No Rancho Notorious 1952 or The Naked Spur 1953, with their shows of man's cruelty towards man, and the force of body against body. Instead, passion is sorrowful. The acting, mostly disposable, is dotted with remarkable moments of pain and realization, and the violent struggles culminate in sensations of loss rather than victory. Neither the crimes themselves nor the vengeance are glorious. They are small, pathetic, misguided. This sadness is tucked away throughout the film, most elegantly in the face of the goon played by Lon Chaney Jr., whose every glance contains a desolation at odds with the simple scumbag he portrays. After the brawl in the bar, Chaney glances up, a brief moment of reflection, and inner pain not paved over by drink and glory and evil, with the realization that he has done something wrong in taking innocent life. Such moments break the facade, push past the script, and place the spectator face to face with a humanity which seeps through the seams of otherwise flat characterizations. The sensation given in these brief moments is as emotionally overwhelming as any psychological realism. The final movement, Into the Mountains, is largely separate from what has preceded it. The orange/tan base color is replaced by a blinding white, framed by blue and green. The background figures who move so insistently through the rest of the film disappear, the complex plains of urban areas and interiors replaced by the expanses of the endless rows of hills, trees, and mountains. This empty world feels as if it were eternal, and the struggle up the mountain is like the scaling of Mount Olympus. The smallness of the central drama becomes apparent next to the scope of the vistas. The clouds roll in, followed by darkness, and the camera moves closer, out of the reality of location and into a series of constructed sets. I would unscientifically estimate that Passion is roughly 50% studio and 50% location. Alton's punchy, high-contrast Technicolor photography unifies this potential visual disparity. His camera manages to restrain the splendor of the California landscape and elevate the artifice of the cheap sets to the same pitch. Transitions between location and set are hardly jarring. The control of color and texture is too complete. The real looks so fake that the manufactured feels like documentary. The final cabin echoes the interior of the Malo Hacienda, and as the tragedy is washed away with sweat and snow, the camera glides past DeCarlo and Wilde towards its final resting place, a cabin window looking out at a fake tree, with a painted backdrop of mountains and sky. The awkward murmurings of the characters drift and diffuse against the blue-white landscape, and in this final gesture, Dwan/Alton remind us what is beyond the window is of equal importance to drama within the cabin. What saves Passion from being the footnote that it seems is an approach that supersedes its surface content. Dwan/Alton's agenda is not in the narrative but in the environment. Their ideas emerge from within the images rather than being placed on top of them. If Dwan has long lingered in the shadows of his contemporaries in Hollywood, it is because he is a formalist almost to a fault. The aspects of a film usually regarded as important are, at best, workmanlike in Passion. It is in their sense of craft and control of space, their ability to formulate a narrative film, not as a story but an object, that Dwan and Alton push us past any perceived mediocrity through the window and towards the sublime.